When my son handed out gifts to everyone at the table, but skipped me, I didn't say a word. I just sat there, smiling faintly, while he laughed with friends and handed his uncle a bottle of scotch I once loved. My name was never mentioned, not even in passing. I had flown across 2 states to be here, but I wasn't really here, was I? He told everyone I was gone for the first 15 years of his life. What he didn't say was that I went away to keep him safe. What he doesn't know is that I still remember the night I walked into that police station, took the fall, and told them I acted alone. His mother promised she'd tell him the truth one day. She never did. Now, years later, he has a child of his own. And when I see my grandson's eyes light up at the stories I tell, I know I only have one chance left. Not to beg, not to explain, but to show. Quietly, patiently. They gave everyone gifts but me. That night, I decided my son will learn what real success looks like. It won't come with ribbons or applause. It will come when he finally asks, "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me?" Before we dive into this story of quiet revenge and buried truths, hit subscribe and stick with me. Because by the end, you'll understand why sometimes silence is the loudest scream a father can make. I moved into the small house on Willow Creek Road, just as the last leaves of October curled into themselves and fell to the ground. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, squeaky floorboards, and a view of the back of Mark's fence, but it was close. Close enough to maybe hear my grandson playing. Close enough to matter, I thought. The real estate agent asked why a man like me would want to downsize from a lakeside cabin to this forgotten part of town. I gave him the kind of answer people accept without follow-ups, families nearby. I didn't tell him that Mark didn't know, or maybe didn't care, that I was moving in. I didn't tell him I'd rehearsed a dozen versions of how I might run into him at the grocery store, say something neutral like, "How's work?" and hope it wouldn't turn into silence. It had been 10 years since I'd last seen him face to face. 15 since I'd been there for any of the important stuff. And it wasn't because I didn't want to be. You see, I served in the Army, and when I came home, I was still serving. This time in silence, behind bars. The official charge was insurance fraud. The unofficial truth? I took the blame to keep someone else out of prison. Someone I once loved more than life itself. Mark was just a boy then. By the time I got out, he was already a man. Tall, educated, closed off. I wrote letters from prison that were never answered, sent gifts that were returned unopened. I told myself that when the time was right, I'd explain. But years passed, and the time never came, until now. I learned through Facebook that Mark's birthday was coming up. He didn't invite me, of course, but I knew the date, the place, even the guest list. I'd heard from a neighbor that his wife, Erin, was organizing a backyard get-together. Nothing fancy, just friends, family, laughter. I bought a navy blue sweater, had it wrapped at a shop downtown. On the tag, I wrote in small, steady handwriting, "For the winters you'll face, even when they're not outside." It was the kind of gift a father gives when he's not sure if he's allowed to love out loud anymore. I arrived at the party a few minutes late, as planned, just enough to not make a scene. The backyard buzzed with laughter and music. Balloons swayed lazily in the autumn wind. I spotted Mark from across the yard. He was holding a beer, talking to his Uncle Ray, the same uncle who once taught him how to ride a bike while I watched from the window of a halfway house. When Mark saw me, he didn't smile. But he didn't ask me to leave either. That was something. I handed him the gift, not pushing it into his hands, just offering it like a peace treaty. He nodded, a short, tight nod. No words. The evening wore on. Guests gathered near the fire pit as Aaron brought out wrapped boxes and bags. Mark opened each with casual appreciation. A signed baseball from his colleague, a Bluetooth speaker from his sister, a bottle of scotch from Uncle Ray. My gift sat untouched on the side table. No one acknowledged it. Not even Aaron, who gave me a polite smile once, then never again. Then came the moment that burned itself into my mind like a scar. Mark looked around the group, smiled wide, and said, "I have a little something for each of you." He began handing out envelopes, gift cards, handwritten notes, even a joke book for Ray. People laughed, thanked him, hugged him. He skipped me, just skipped me. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded, as if any movement might betray the fact that I was bleeding inside. No one noticed, or maybe they did, and decided not to say anything. I smiled, at nothing, at no one. The kind of smile you practice when you've been taught that love must be quiet, especially when it's unreturned. After the party, I waited in the cold for my cab. Aaron didn't say goodbye. Mark didn't look back. I held the gift in my lap the whole ride home. He hadn't even opened it. That night, I wrote one sentence in my journal. If being present isn't enough, maybe being absent again will be. But I didn't believe it. Not really. Not yet. The morning after Mark's birthday, I stood outside with a hammer and a box of screws, staring at the leaning section of his backyard fence. It creaked every time the wind blew, and I'd seen his son nearly trip over the broken plank last week. I figured if I couldn't be let in, I could at least help hold something together from the outside. I didn't knock. I didn't text. I just worked, quietly, the way I'd done most things in my life. By noon, the panel was sturdy again, aligned and weatherproofed. I left a small, sticky note on the gate. Reinforced the fence, safer for little feet, H. There was no response. Not that day. Not the next. Not ever. I started leaving small things at their doorstep. A hardcover book about dinosaurs for Leo. A handmade wooden airplane I'd carved in the garage. A snow globe from Germany I'd kept since the army. A week later, the airplane was in the trash bin beside the driveway. It's a strange thing to try to love someone who doesn't want your love. It makes your gestures feel like trespasses. Still, I couldn't stop myself. Then came the day I saw Leo walking alone along the sidewalk after school. Backpack half zipped, shoelaces flapping. "Hey there," I said gently, stepping out from behind my mailbox. "You must be cold." He blinked at me, then nodded. "I have cocoa," I said, "and cookies. But you don't have to come in. You can sit on the porch." To my surprise, he followed. We sat on the steps, sipping cocoa from mismatched mugs. He told me about his science project. Volcanoes, apparently. And I told him about the time a real one erupted near where I was stationed in the Philippines. His eyes widened with every word. "You were a soldier?" he asked. "I was. Long ago." "Did you shoot bad guys?" I chuckled. "Sometimes. But mostly, I tried to keep people safe. Like a superhero. More like a janitor with a helmet. I cleaned up a lot of messes." He laughed, and something in me loosened for the first time in weeks. That became our secret ritual. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, Leo would pass by my house on his way home, pretending to tie his shoe, then sneak up the steps for cocoa and stories. I kept it quiet. I didn't dare ruin it with too much joy. One Thursday, I gave him something different. A silver Zippo lighter, scratched, tarnished, but still working. This belonged to my captain, I said. He gave it to me the day I left the army. Leo held it like a relic. One day, I told him, you'll understand why I'm giving it to you. Keep it safe. He nodded solemnly, then tucked it into his coat. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mark standing there, fists clenched, eyes like stone. You gave my kid a lighter? He barked. Are you insane? He didn't use it. I told you to stay away. He's not your responsibility. I just wanted to. You wanted to play grandpa and pretend like nothing happened? He stepped closer. You think a few toys and war stories fix what you did? I stayed silent. My fists were in my pockets, not clenched, just holding. Leo's not coming here again, he said. I catch him near you. I'll call the cops. Got it? He turned and stormed down the steps. I watched him go. The wind lifting the corner of his coat like a curtain on a stage that had just ended the wrong act. That night, I opened the notebook I kept beside my bed. A leather-bound journal, blank when I moved in. Page 1 was now filled. Mark, I wrote, I'm sorry you learned my silence before you ever heard my voice. I should have fought harder to be there. I should have told you sooner why I left. And I should have known that love delayed can feel a lot like love denied. I kept writing. Even after the ink bled, the snow came early that December, covering the sidewalks in white like a clean slate no one dared step on. I'd heard through the grapevine, my old landlord to be exact, that Mark and Aaron were hosting a Christmas Eve dinner, family only. Still, I told myself that maybe, just maybe, this was the olive branch. I showed up wearing my best coat, the one I bought back when my salary was still honest and my name still meant something in the community. In one hand, I carried a pie. In the other, a small gift for Leo, a compass etched with the words, "Find your way, even when others lose theirs." When I knocked on the door, I could hear the laughter inside, plates clinking, a Christmas song humming faintly. For a moment I thought, what if he lets me in? What if this was the turning point? The door opened, and Mark stood there, not in surprise, but in disbelief. What the hell are you doing here? I just thought. I lifted the pie like a shield. It's Christmas. You weren't invited. I know. I just wanted to. To what? Crash the one place where people actually feel safe? I caught movement behind him. Erin. Her eyes didn't soften. Leo peeked out from behind her legs. I brought something for Leo. Mark didn't even glance at the gift. Take it and leave. Mark, please, just 5 minutes. He stepped outside and slammed the door behind him. No, you don't get 5 minutes. You had 15 years. Behind the frosted window, I saw someone shake their head. A cousin? A neighbor? Didn't matter. In their eyes, I was the man who had walked away. Mark leaned in. Don't ever show up here again. You're not part of this family. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I placed the pie gently on the porch and set the compass beside it. Then I turned around, walked back to the street, and never looked over my shoulder. I made it to the corner before the tears came. I ducked behind a fence and let it out. Not the loud, cinematic kind of crying. The quiet, leaking kind. The kind that seeps from your bones. Tao Jiang Bi Vai Sao, I whispered to no one, or maybe to God. Back at home, I lit a single candle. The house was cold. I didn't turn on the heat. Instead, I pulled out the journal and turned to a blank page. Maybe it was time to stop writing to Mark. Maybe it was time to write the truth for myself. I opened the filing box I hadn't touched in 20 years. Inside, under old Army records and faded letters, was a manila envelope. Inside that, a copy of the court transcripts, my name, the charge, the sentencing, insurance fraud, 5 years. But there was another name scribbled in a margin, hers, Mark's mother. She had forged documents to claim life insurance after her sister's death. I found out. She begged me not to tell. Said if she went to jail, Mark would grow up in the system. Said I owed her. So I did what I thought a man should do. I went to the police. Said it was me. I destroyed the documents myself. She didn't know anything. They offered me a deal. I took it. I never told Mark. Never told anyone. And now here I was, old, alone, watching my own son hate me for a crime I didn't commit. That night, I wrote it all down, page after page. The lies, the silence, the choices. I thought silence was sacrifice, I wrote. But maybe silence is just surrender in disguise. I closed the book and stared at the last line. Maybe justice isn't loud. Maybe it's patient. For the first time, I considered that the truth might not fix anything, but it needed to be told, even if no one believed it, even if it changed nothing. I didn't have much left to offer. No wealth, no influence, not even an invitation to a holiday meal. But I had a voice, and more importantly, I had the truth. I spent 3 nights recording it, my story. I spoke plainly into an old tape recorder, the kind I used back in basic training. No embellishments, no pleas for forgiveness, just the truth. I didn't walk away, Leo. I was sent away. I took a deal so your father wouldn't grow up without his mother. I thought I was protecting him. I thought I was doing the right thing. But silence, even when noble, still leaves scars. I didn't say Mark's name in anger. I didn't name his mother to blame her. I only said what happened and why. When the recordings were done, I copied them to a flash drive. Then I wrote a letter, short, careful, folded it inside a small notebook with my Army insignia stamped on the cover. For Leo, when you're ready to know me, I'll be here. I placed the package in his school bag one afternoon while he was visiting a neighbor who often watched him after class. I didn't expect anything, but I hoped. A week passed. Nothing. Then one Saturday morning, I heard a knock, not at my door, at my window. Leo stood outside, coat half zipped, cheeks red from the cold. In his hands, the notebook. He climbed onto the porch, sat beside me, didn't say a word for nearly 5 minutes, just held the flash drive like it was something sacred. Did it really happen like that? He finally whispered. Yes. Why didn't anyone tell me? Sometimes people lie because they're afraid, and sometimes they let those lies harden into truth. He nodded, quiet. Then, I want to ask Grandma. That startled me. He ran off before I could stop him. By Monday, the dominoes had begun to fall. I got a call from a number I hadn't seen in decades. It was her. Why would you drag him into this? She snapped. He deserves the truth. You think you're doing him a favor? Mark already made his peace. I'm not trying to change his mind. I'm just telling our son what I never could. She hung up without another word. But the damage was done. The following Thursday, Mark showed up at my door, not with anger in his face, but something far more dangerous. Confusion. He didn't come inside, just stood there, fists at his sides. You gave Leo a flash drive? Yes. You told him everything? Only what I lived. I read the court transcripts, he said slowly. I went to the archives. I saw the police notes. They mentioned Mom. Not by name, but they knew. I waited. She told me you left because you couldn't handle responsibility. She said you gambled everything away. I met his eyes. And you believed that? He looked away. Mark, I didn't say anything back then because I thought protecting your image of her was more important than saving mine. He didn't reply. I spent my life trying not to take up space in yours. Still, silence. I'm not asking for a relationship, I said. I just wanted you to know you were never abandoned. He stepped back. Leo's not visiting again. I understand. But he didn't leave. He looked at me like he was searching for a hole in the story, for some sign I was manipulating him. There was a name, he muttered, half to himself. A neighbor. He testified that he saw Mom take something from the mailbox the week before Aunt Carol's insurance filed. His voice cracked. I thought he was just confused. Sometimes, I said, it's easier to think the world is wrong than to admit the story you've built your life on is broken. He stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked down the steps. He didn't take the flash drive, but he didn't tell me to leave town either. Progress, maybe, or just the eye of the storm. The next time Mark came, he didn't knock. He walked straight into the yard and stood beneath the old maple tree, hands in his coat pockets, jaw tight. I watched him from the porch for a moment, unsure if I should speak first. I didn't. I waited. I read it all, he said, voice low but heavy. The whole notebook, the court documents, the transcripts, the police report, the recording you gave Leo. Still, I stayed silent. He looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. Why didn't you tell me? You let me grow up thinking you just left, that you didn't care, that you chose your pride over your family. I took a breath. Because I thought you needed to believe she was good. She lied, he said, louder now. For years. Yes. And you didn't say a damn word. I stood. My knees ached, but I walked down the steps slowly and met him on the patch of frosted grass. I wanted you to have a mother, I said, not a suspect. His mouth opened, then closed. You asked why I stayed silent? I reached into my coat and pulled out a small box, velvet lined, worn from time. I opened it and handed him what was inside, a silver lighter. He turned it over in his hand. This is the one you gave Leo. I nodded. Why are you giving it to me? Open it. He flicked the lid. Inside, etched into the metal in fading script, were the words, I chose to be hated, rather than let my son be shamed for loving a thief. Mark froze. I saw it then. The moment the story inside him cracked. The walls broke first in his eyes, then in his shoulders. He dropped the lighter, but I caught it before it hit the ground. He stepped back, wiped his face roughly, then said, all this time, I blamed the wrong person. I didn't say, I know. He sat on the porch steps like he used to when he was 10, chin on his knees, staring at the horizon. After you went away, he said, Mom told everyone you ran off because you couldn't face the responsibility. I believed her. She told me you drank, gambled, that you gambled away Aunt Carol's funeral money. I hated you. I know. But then I started remembering things. Small things. You never drank. You saved every cent. And when Aunt Carol died, you were the one who called the insurance, not her. He shook his head. I feel like a fool. You were a child. He looked at me, this time without anger. No, I'm a man now. and I treated you like a stranger at every table we ever shared? You had reasons? They weren't good enough. His voice broke. You didn't deserve what I gave you. He reached into his coat and pulled out the notebook, the same one he had read. He held it like a relic, then opened to a page I hadn't seen since I wrote it. I never regretted protecting my family, but I do regret being erased from it. Did you mean that? He asked. I nodded. I think, he said slowly, the only thing worse than being abandoned is realizing you were the one doing the abandoning all along. His words didn't ask for forgiveness. They didn't need to. Sometimes, truth does the forgiving on your behalf. He handed me the notebook, then stood. Come to dinner. What? Tonight, Aaron made too much lasagna, and Leo's been asking about you. Mark, it's just dinner, he said, almost a whisper. Don't read into it. I smiled. I won't. But I did. That night, I sat at a table I once watched from a distance. Aaron greeted me with caution but didn't stop me from sitting. Leo grinned like Christmas came early, and Mark, he poured me a glass of wine without saying a word. Halfway through the meal, Leo pulled the lighter from his pocket and set it beside his plate. It still works, he said proudly. Want to show me how to use it, Grandpa? I looked at Mark. He nodded. And just like that, silence wasn't our enemy anymore. It was our language. It was a quiet afternoon when Mark returned to the cemetery, hands in his coat pockets, the wind tugging at his collar like an old memory. He hadn't been back to his mother's grave in years, not since he learned the truth that shattered the story he'd carried, protected, defended. He stood in front of the headstone, fingers tracing the etchings carved decades ago. Maria Whitmore, beloved mother, 1955, 2001. He took out a small metal plaque from his coat. It was simple, no ornament, no flourish. He knelt and fixed it to the base of the stone, drilling the screws into the cold granite with careful, deliberate force. When he stepped back, the new words gleamed in the winter light. Forgive me. Dad was right. No one was there to witness it. No cameras, no ceremony. Just the wind, the stone, and a son giving back the truth he'd stolen. A week later, Henry's house sat empty. No note, no farewell, just gone. The neighbors said he left early, just before sunrise. A cab rolled in, idled for a moment, then carried him away with 2 bags and an old notebook under his arm. No forwarding address. At dinner that night, Leo noticed first. Where's Grandpa? Mark paused mid-bite, then set down his fork. He looked at his son, the boy who'd opened the door he never could. He had to go, Mark said softly. Why? Mark stared at the empty chair at the end of the table. Because sometimes, when someone has finished building something, they don't need to stay to see it stand. Leo didn't quite understand. Not fully. But he nodded, like he trusted that one day he would. Then he said something that caught Mark off guard. Grandpa taught you how to be a dad, didn't he? Mark looked away, his throat thick. Yes, he whispered. Yes, he did. Time passed. Seasons changed. Leo grew. By 25, he was wearing suits and carrying case files, defending people who couldn't speak for themselves. Law had become his way of honoring the man who once chose silence over spectacle. On the day his first book was published, he stood at the podium in a packed library hall, the title projected behind him in bold, unwavering letters. They gave everyone gifts but me, so I showed my son what quiet success looks like. He began his speech with a story. A man once gave me a lighter. It was old, dented, barely sparked anymore. But inside, it had a message etched in steel. A message that changed how I saw the world. He held up the same lighter. It said, "I chose to be hated rather than let my son be shamed for loving a thief." The audience fell into a hush. That man was my grandfather. He didn't leave me a trust fund. He didn't leave me land or property. He left me something harder to carry. His name, his story, and the burden of truth. He paused. And what I learned is that sometimes the greatest justice isn't loud. It doesn't come in courtrooms or headlines. Sometimes it's a father who quietly shows up every day, even when he's not welcome, even when he's misunderstood. That's what success looks like. Later that night, he sat alone in his office, flipping through an old notebook. His grandfather's handwriting danced across yellowed pages, each line steeped in memory. On the very last page, there was one sentence, written in a shaky hand. "If you're reading this, then I did my job." Leo closed the book and smiled. The lighter sat on his desk, still tarnished, still heavy. He lit it once, watched the flame flicker, then whispered, "Thank you." Somewhere far from the city, in a modest town where no one knew his name, Henry Whitmore walked along a quiet beach. His hair had gone white. His gait was slower. But in his chest, a stillness lived where regret used to be. He never heard the speech, never read the book, never knew about the plaque on the gravestone. But in the wind, in the waves, in the weight that had finally lifted, he felt it. The quiet success of a father who had done enough.